Hi all, Old Geek again, and here's my fourth video on the subject of making 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons a better game. Of course, better is subjective. I know not all of my old school viewers are fans of this 5e series as well, but I've started, so I'll finish. This video will focus on spellcasting and magic items. So let's dive straight in with the first of those topics. Spellcasting. There is too much magic in 5th edition D&D, specifically in terms of character powers. So much so that it loses its wow factor. I'm aiming to reduce the number of spells cast, but increase the variety of spells used. And in many cases, add extra incentives to use less fashionable spells. I don't care if these changes have an impact on mechanical balance. All that matters is that the changes bring the magic back to magic use. Start off with arcane spells. Arcane spells must be found or taught. Attempting to copy or learn a spell from a looted spellbook or scroll requires an Arcana check. I set this at DC 8 plus spell level. If a tutor helps the character decipher a looted scroll or book, and neither had the spell already known, then the Arcana check is made with advantage. If the spell is known to the tutor, or the tutor is teaching the character a spell from their own collection, no roll is needed. The point of this is to guide players away from the always chosen spells. There are no spells automatically granted on level up. The character will gain the spell slots, the ability to cast more spells, but in order to add spells to their library, they have to find them or be taught them. This leads to more creative use of less common spells and less reliance on the more common ones. There is nothing imaginative about spamming fireballs and magic missiles in every combat. In fact, I as a DM find that frustrating. One of our most memorable moments when playing AD&D was a magic user using ventriloquism to activate a magic item from range, which his hawk familiar then dropped on the bad guy. The hawk was hovering above the bad guy's tent when the spell was cast. Seeing my players come up with those types of plan is so much more satisfying than having them blast with damage dealing spells every round. I will ensure that there are plenty of spell scrolls tucked away in the adventures I run, and typically an arcane caster will end up with more spells to choose from in my games eventually, as long as they are thorough when searching. It's just that they might not exactly be the ones that they would typically use. When a spell calls for a save every round to remove its effects, the first such save is made with disadvantage. Mages, here is the carrot to move you away from those boring damage dealing spells and use spells with different effects. It makes the battlefield much more dynamic and interesting. Bring out Whole Person, bring out the slow spells, Stinking Cloud, spells like that which have a more flavourful effect on the battle than just damage, damage, damage. Ritual casting of spells expends spell slots. No spamming of spells, please, but I might just make the effects of your spells a little more potent on a case-by-case basis. Those rules aren't set in stone. I just see what happens and go with it. Cantrip use is limited to proficiency bonus plus character level times per short rest. I've bounced around with this one. Initially it was per day, but per short rest worked perfectly at lower levels. Of course, as the character gains levels, it becomes less of an issue for them. Still though, it makes spellcasters think twice about wasting their spells on minor damage cantrips every round. And I'm now seeing them resort to using missile weapons from time to time. And that's a win as far as I'm concerned. Basically, what I don't want to see is constant use of low damage dealing cantrips that do 1d6, 1d8, and so on. I want to see them think about what they do. In one game I played, I had a low level mage, and I cast Prestidigitation to create the flavour of blood in water because we had sharks approaching. That's the sort of approach I want to see from my players. Divine casters may have their spells withdrawn or limited if they do not follow the tenets of their chosen deity. This should be a given and should be part of the main game rules. You get your spells from your deity. Deal with it. And in that I include paladins, because I do not like the idea of them drawing spells from an oath. I see paladins as holy warriors. That's the way I expect them to be. All casters must use spell components. In many cases, this might simply be framed as replenishing the contents of a component pouch when in town. But some components might not be so easily acquired. In my game, the idea of the spell focus does not exist. There are no spell focuses to handwave this away. I included this to get my players to consider the game environment and hopefully think more about the spellcasting process and engage with the game world. I'm afraid to say I have neglected this a little, so that's a note to self. Remind players about it next week. I'm now moving on to magic items. Now, some of these magic item rules are more a theory than what has happened in practice because of the way our game has gone. Characters have attunement slots equal to their proficiency bonus. It's hard to ascertain the impact that this has had so far, as my group are currently between levels 4 and 6. Progression through the levels is a lot slower in my game, so I was predicting that they might find a few more useful magic items along the way. And I like the idea that the items a character finds have an impact on what the character becomes. They don't become over-reliant on the character abilities. They are defined very much by what they have found, and that is very much a first edition style way of thinking. Some extremely rare or unique items will require the use of more than one attunement slot. Ditto for this. The topic of attunement really hasn't been relevant in our game so far, and that's due to the nature of the items that they found and the fact they are still quite low level. Attuning to an item can only be done once the item's properties have been learned, either through time spent studying or through the use of the identify spell. Same again, and add to this, the nature of the items the characters have discovered has really not made this applicable, plus the makeup of the party. This rule hasn't really come into play all that much. Wands and staves will not recharge daily they will have fixed charges. That's as per 1st and 2nd edition. Some will have a means of being recharged, which must be discovered by the PC. This is a removal of something that I see as a video gamey element, and it adds that sense of the unknown to the use of wands and staves. Yes, it means a bit of bookkeeping for me, but I don't mind that. Many magic items will have class or alignment requirements for some or all of their powers. I've implemented this in the form of personal artifacts that grow with the character, that tie in with the character goals and in-game events. I find that these help guide the players and keep them consistent in their role-playing. Not that my current group need that, but it has helped in the past with other players. Plus, I do like alignment mechanics. I don't like the fact that Wizards of the Coast have moved away from having alignment as a key mechanic in the game, so I'm trying to push it back into the game. There will be no magic shops per se. There may be apothecaries selling potions, or scribes willing to assist with the creation of magic scrolls for a fee. Magic should be sought after. Many magic items in my games are unique. They are not simply traded on street corners. For me, magic item shops are an abomination, and their prevalence in games, particularly around the 3rd edition era, really brings out the old curmudgeon in me. I don't want them there, and this is one of those things where, one of those hills I will die on. PCs with appropriate skills, equipment, ingredients and recipes may attempt to brew potions and create scrolls. This is something I want to encourage in the game, but the players haven't used it yet. I have introduced it with NPCs though, so it is something that is going to be more in the game as it progresses. Well, as you can see, these rules have been a bit of a mixed bag so far. It's hard to judge how some of them would work because of the game situations in my current campaign. We've also had a lack of arcane casters in the party. One player had a sorcerer, but he died while he was still level 3, and that player now plays a cleric. The other casters in the party we're currently playing are a druid and a ranger. Before anyone comes at me with the line that my changes put the players off playing arcane characters, I think that has maybe affected just one PC, but most of the players are playing the types of characters that they usually do. There's a warlock in their other party. It's the same players, but they've got a second party of characters, and that warlock is a hexblade. And yes, I think the cantrip reduction influenced that choice. But the character's packed weapon is a blade that grows in power with them. That's one of my magic item tweaks, which is something I've already said I really like. So that's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. Right, there's only 1 or 2 more videos to go in this series now, so give me your thoughts in the comments below. I've been the Old Geek. Good night.